Stop the Nazi games indeed. Hallo allemaal, daar zijn we dan weer. RHTV Live. En natuurlijk streamen we live vanuit het mooie Maastricht. Ja, en voor het internationaal publiek gaan we aanwijzen waar het nou precies ligt. Het ligt natuurlijk in het zuiden des lands. So hello to you all. We are streaming live from Maastricht, which is in the south of the Netherlands. And of course we're going to look at politics within the Netherlands and geopolitics, which means it's outside of the Netherlands, right? First, we're going to take a look at Thierry Baudet warning the cabinet for a very, very dangerous situation within Syria, right? Ja, mensen, eerst gaan we kijken naar Syrië. Thierry Baudet die heeft het over Syrië. We gaan onze geheugen even opfrissen. En we gaan even kijken naar wat Thierry zei over Syrië. Yeah. So Thierry Baudet is basically saying you guys are very naive in supporting a group trying to overthrow Assad, right? This happened 4 years ago. 4 jaar geleden kwam Thierry met deze memorabele speech. En die praat dus over Syrië. We gaan even hier naar kijken.
Zoals wie lui is nooit gelukkig kan worden, zo kan wie sentimenteel is ook nooit vrede bereiken. De van sentimentaliteit doortrokken mens is voortdurend in de war, voortdurend gegrepen door nu eens dit leed, dan weer dat leed. Maar nooit zal hij in staat zijn een plan te maken, een doel voor ogen te houden, zoals in de huidige situatie in het Midden-Oosten, een visie te ontwikkelen op een stabiele eindsituatie. Toen ik pas net in de Kamer was verkozen, ik herinner me nog goed, 2,5 jaar geleden, deed ik hier een debat over Syrië. Het was een van mijn eerste debatten. Allemaal verontwaardigde, brave gezichten, uitgestreken monden, allemaal idealisme. Men wilde doorgaan met het verzwakken van Assad. Men was woedend op mij. Hoe durfde ik in twijfel te trekken dat de systematische destabilisatie van het Midden-Oosten een goed idee zou zijn? Hoe durfde ik in twijfel te trekken dat al die Toyota's die Rutte daar naartoe stuurde goed terecht zouden komen?
So his maiden speech was about Syria, right? And he said we should not support Syria. We should not support the rebels fighting the Syrian government. And everyone within Parliament was, how dare you? How dare you say that?
Hoe durfde ik in twijfel te trekken dat die 25 miljoen die Nederland daar naartoe stuurde goed terecht zou komen? Inderdaad, ik trok het in twijfel. Ik trek het nog steeds in twijfel en ik krijg gelijk vandaag de dag. We hebben hier ook een delegatie Koerdische activisten ontvangen. Ik weet het ook nog heel goed. Samen met Joël Voordewind zat ik toen een aantal andere woordvoerders in die hoorzitting, in die bijeenkomst. Allemaal warme gevoelens, allemaal idealisme, allemaal goede intenties. En de enige vraag die ik stelde was, hoeveel divisies heeft u? Hoeveel tanks? Hoeveel vliegtuigen? Ik werd uitgelachen. Dat deed er toch niet toe? Het ging er toch om dat we hier met elkaar die mooie nieuwe wereld bouwden. Op puur idealisme, op puur goede bedoelingen. Dan zou ooit de nieuwe wereldorde aanbreken. En nu...
So he was talking to a Kurdish delegation from Syria, which was in the Netherlands, and he asked, "How big is your army? You know, how many people do you have? You want to fight Assad? You need a bigger army." You know, and all those people were like, "Oh no, it's all flower power and hippy dippy," you know, and yeah.
Precies het scenario dat ik en vele realisten met mij hebben voorspeld. De aanval van Turkije op Syrië is het logische en volstrekt voorzienbare gevolg van de westerse destabilisatie van het Midden-Oosten. Een destabilisatie waar politici die nu krokodillentranen huilen schuldig aan zijn.
So Turkey attacked northeast of Syria because of the Kurds. right? The Kurds are being supported by the US, and the Turkish people see them as an enemy, so they attack them, right? And Shahi is saying, it's your fault. You supported the Kurds, you supported all these jihadi groups trying to overthrow Assad, right? Not knowing that all these jihadi groups would fight against each other and stuff like that. Now, in the Netherlands, there is a basic rule, right? You're not allowed to support any terrorist organization. But what did the Dutch government do? Well, we supported a terrorist organization. Yep, we did. Called Debat al-Shamia, so-called humanitarian people who were not humanitarian, right? So Jabhat al-Shamia, the Netherlands gave support on jihadis in Syria, right? Jabhat al-Shamia, we gave for 25 million euros on cars, 313 in total, food, medication, communication devices, tents, uniforms, and we trained them, right? So according to our ministry, you are not allowed to support terrorist organizations. You'll get sanctions, right? So here we go. Nationale Sanctielijst Terrorisme, National Sanction List Terrorism. On the National Sanction List Terrorism are people and organizations that are involved with terrorist activities. Their money is frozen. That means that they cannot get their money and cannot use bank accounts and credit cards. So our Dutch government supported Jabhat al-Shamia for 3 years, right? We gave support to a terrorist organization, whilst in the Netherlands there's a rule that you're not allowed to support terrorist organizations, otherwise your bank account will be frozen and money will be taken away from you. But our government supported the terrorists, right? So when will their bank account be frozen? Yeah? Wanneer wordt daar de bankrekening bevroren daar in Den Haag, sinds wij 3 jaar lang terroristen hebben gesteund? 3 jaar lang. Auto's gegeven, communicatieapparatuur, voedsel, medicijnen. We hebben hun zelfs getraind. Dit is toch gewoon belachelijk. Kan toch niet waar zijn? So we gave training to terrorists, yet we are not on the sanctions list, and we don't even apply to our own rules. So this is all happening, right? This is just a memory refresher. Ja, even een geheugensteuntje. Ja, dus dit gebeurt allemaal, mensen. Onvoorstelbaar. Maar de regering gaat gewoon door. Hè? Our government is just still going on, even though it's demissionary, right? Demissionary government, yet they're still going on. And we have Thierry Baudet confronting our demissionary Prime Minister, Mark Rutte, about the Nord Stream pipeline, right? Thierry is like, hey, what about that interesting phone call with Victoria Nuland and Jeffrey Pyatt? And what about Biden, firing a prosecutor looking at the son of Joe Biden, right? Burisma Holdings, that gas company in Ukraine. Well, Hunter Biden became CEO of that company. The guy he's never been in Ukraine before, man. And then he's a CEO of a company, right? And the prosecutor looking at that company gets fired by Biden. Really? Yeah, that really happened. So we're going to take a look at a clip of Thierry Baudet confronting the demissionary prime minister.
Ik hoorde net de minister-president zeggen dat hij gelooft dat deze oorlog te winnen is voor Oekraïne, zoals hij dat dan noemt, of voor het NAVO-blok. En ik vroeg mij toch af of de minister-president kan schetsen hoe hij dat dan voor zich ziet. Wat is dat dan? Hè?
So the prime minister says Ukraine needs to win the war. Right? He needs to win the war. Zelensky needs to win the war. So this is all happening in the mind of our prime minister, demissionary prime minister. And what was in his mind back then in Syria was we need to throw Assad away, we need to overthrow him. We need to win this. We need to win this. Well, we lost that war. Assad is still in power. And Thierry is asking, do you really think that Ukraine can win the war?
Dat Rusland helemaal verdreven wordt uit het voorheen Oekraïense grondgebied, inclusief de Krim. Acht de minister-president dat nou daadwerkelijk een realistisch scenario? Gaat dat daadwerkelijk in zijn idee ooit gebeuren?
Het antwoord op al deze vragen beginnen en eindigen altijd in Kiev. En uiteindelijk is er maar één club mensen. En dat is de Oekraïense regering die kan besluiten wat het moment zou kunnen zijn dat men bereid is om met Moskou gesprekken te gaan voeren over het beëindigen van deze oorlog.
So he's basically saying Ukraine needs to decide when the war is going to stop, right? It's like, what, really? Really? We supported terrorist groups, right, for 3 years to overthrow Assad. Now we are in the 3rd year of the Ukraine war, supporting Ukraine fighting Russia. It's really insane. This guy doesn't even know what he's doing. And now he's on the list of being a general of NATO, general secretary of NATO. It's really, really amazing. Ja, mensen, deze gast gaat nooit weg. Hij heeft ook gezegd, ik wil al mijn hele leven lang premier blijven. Deze gast gaat nooit weg, gaat nooit uit de politieke sferen weg. Nee, hij gaat naar de NATO toe waarschijnlijk. En wordt daar secretaris-generaal. Dat is toch onvoorstelbaar. Really? Really? This guy as a general secretary of NATO? Oh my God. He broke the Netherlands in 13 years, right? Supporting the wrong side all the time, and now he thinks Ukraine's going to win. Really? There are 13 and 14-year-olds going to the front line because all the adults are shot dead or wounded. There are no more soldiers in Ukraine. Ukraine cannot keep this up, This is why France is in Odessa and other places within Ukraine. There is no Ukrainian army anymore. It's all gone, all wounded or dead. So this is all happening, and the prime minister still thinks that Ukraine can win the war. It's really, really insane. Now, let's take a look at Al Jazeera and see what's happening in Tel Aviv.
Demonstrators are gathering in front of the Israeli parliament and government buildings. These are live pictures from West Jerusalem, where a 3-day protest has been launched outside the Knesset. Thousands of people are calling on the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, to resign. Let's bring in our correspondent, Hamda Salhuth. She's joining us from West Jerusalem. And Hamda, there have been many different protests since the war on Gaza began. Talk us through who's at this one and why they're calling on the Prime Minister to resign.
This is quite a large demonstration. We're talking about tens of thousands of Israelis who've taken to the streets in what they're saying is going to be a 4-day demonstration in protest of Israel's government. Initially, there were protests for the release of Israeli captives. Then there were protests against the government nearly 4 months into the war, saying that they simply weren't doing enough. And now there are full-blown anti-government demonstrations against the government and calling for the release of Israeli captives. Just to show you a bit of the scene behind us here, tens of thousands of Israelis who say are going to be camped out in tents in this surrounding area. There are street closures all around the perimeters of the Israeli parliament building in West Jerusalem. And all of this comes as there haven't really been any signs of a deal to bring back the remaining Israeli captives. So these protesters said in a memo earlier that they were, quote, fed up with the state of politics within the state of Israel and that they're going to take matters into their own hands.
And Netanyahu saying
there is no hostage negotiation because all the Hamas leaders, all the negotiators were killed, right? They were killed. Israel killed them. One was shot in Beirut by a drone attack. Another one was in South Lebanon. You know, all these negotiators are gone. There are no negotiators anymore. And this is how how you break a deal. This is why there are still hostages in the Gaza Strip, if you want to believe that, right? We know that Israel killed 3 of the hostages. So, really, really sad to see what's happening over there in the Middle East.
Hamda, that a combination of military pressure, something that he's maintained since the war began, and flexibility in talks, he said, will bring about the hostage release. We have been hearing from him. What else has he been saying?
Several points from the Israeli Prime Minister tonight. First, he said that Israel, quote, is showing flexibility in the talks, but that Hamas has demands that he says would not be good for the security of Israel. Additionally, he says that those who say that he is not working hard enough are simply incorrect. He also addressed the idea of Israel's invasion into Gaza's southernmost city, Rafah, saying that the Israeli army is prepared to both invade the city and evacuate the nearly 1.5 million Palestinians who are seeking refuge there.
And Hamda, he also said that he expects to make a full and quick recovery from surgery. He is going...
No one believes you, Benny. No one believes you. You are a war criminal. Very sad to see what's happening over there in the Middle East. And people in Israel, people in Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, or other parts of the country, right? Keep on protesting. This monster needs to go. He needs to be in jail. So keep on protesting. We are behind you. We are standing right next to you and behind you and in front of you. The guy needs to go. So let's take a look at what happened in Gaza at Al-Aqsa Hospital.
At least 4 Palestinians have been killed and several have been injured in Israeli airstrikes on tents near the Al-Aqsa Hospital in Deir al-Balah. The initial reports suggest that the attack has been aimed at tents that have been housing people who have been sheltering from the violence and journalists. We can join Al Jazeera Hind Khaldri now, live from the Al-Aqsa Hospital compound. Hind, I know you and the team have reported on many occasions from Al-Aqsa Hospital. Just bring us up to date with, first of all, with what's been happening since this latest attack.
It was a horrifying incident where at 12 p.m. today, the Israeli forces targeted a tent in Al-Aqsa Hospital in Deir al-Balah. It's a tent surrounded by hundreds of other tents. At least 2 Palestinians have been killed, 15 have been injured, including at least 5 journalists. This hospital is not only a hospital, it's a shelter and a refuge for thousands of Palestinians who made and set up their tents, and they have been living here. Journalists have been working from the hospital for months now. This is not only a hospital, it's a house and a home for hundreds of Palestinians, especially under displacement conditions. Talking to a lot of people displaced here, they're saying that they're terrified that this incident is repeating itself, where Al-Shifa Hospital has been attacked in the previous months, and North Star hospitals, and Palestinians are saying that they do not feel safe anywhere and they don't know where they're going to go after that.
I feel for the Palestinians, right? They've been through hell. We've had Ariel Sharon. Remember him, Ariel Sharon? Yeah, he wasn't very friendly to the Palestinians. Then we had Netanyahu. Then we had some other Israeli guy who no one ever heard of, also called Benny. And, you know, there was a period where there was no stable cabinet in Israel, like elections 5 or 6 times. You know, and now we have Benny Netanyahu back in power, and it's sad. It's sad. This guy must be in jail. During the COVID period, right? He was in front of court, and yet he won the last election. Very, very odd thing to see, right? This guy needs to go. He's a monster. You know, these Palestinians are people too, right? And if we take a look at history, you'll see that the Middle East was carved up by England and France, the Sykes-Picot Accord, right? And, you know, they basically left Palestine for the English mandate, and then you had, you know, Balfour Declaration, this and that, and then England lost most power after the Second World War, and so the Palestinian mandate was given to the United Nations, and they had basically put Israel on the map when it was still Palestine, right? So this is all happening, and very, very sad thing to see. And the Israelis say it's our holy land, our sacred land. We were there during biblical times and this and that. Well, so was Alexander the Great. So was Napoleon. Napoleon was there too. You know, so yeah, you can't claim land for yourself because once upon a time you were there. Yeah, right. I mean, come on. Very, very sad thing to see what's happening in Israel and Gaza. And if we look further back at 2011, we need to understand how the destabilization came to be within Northern Africa and the Middle East. You guys remember the Arab Revolt? We're going to look it up. Arab Spring. It's all started in Tunisia, where someone set himself on fire, and you know, the whole country was angry, you know. And then they saw Tunisia rise up. The foreign powers saw Tunisia rise up and they co-opted the revolution. The CIA did, right? So we're going to take a look at what happened in Tunisia. I'm not making this up, right? Here we have the Arab Spring in Tunisia.
We started hearing about demonstrations happening in the southern part of Tunisia. As we were traveling not too far from the region, we heard of what happened to Bouazizi, and then it just kept on growing.
On December 17th, 2010, a young street vendor by the name of Mohamed Bouazizi set himself on fire in a town in southern Tunisia. It led to protests that would force the president out of office after 23 years in power. Bouazizi's decision to kill himself drew attention to people's anger over deteriorating living conditions, police violence, and government corruption. First in Bouazizi's hometown of Sidi Bouzid, and then in cities across the country.
I remember it was December 23rd, 2010. I was performing on stage, and I dedicated one of my songs, which is Ya Tunis Ya Mskina, for Tunisia, to kind of like our Che Guevara, the person who sacrificed himself and enlightened the whole country. It was very, very exciting, and at the same time we were very anxious.
President Zain al-Abidin bin Ali promised reforms and investment in marginalized regions, but the demonstrators didn't buy it. So security forces cracked down on even more than they had already had.
So the speed at which the movement started reaching town after town after town, it really gave very strong signals, and the way people were fighting and were going in the streets gave our inside revolution, inside kind of like sleeping revolution. It really made us very ecstatic and very lots of euphoria. So we really did believe that this movement wasn't going to die.
Not only did it not die, it thrived, and on January 15, 2011, Ben Ali escaped to Saudi Arabia, ending more than 20 years of authoritarian rule. But that still left the difficult work of ensuring a democratic future. For starters, they needed a new constitution. And so, with many competing interests, that wasn't going to be easy. Debates between various actors, ranging from leftists to Islamists, and even members of the old guard, highlighted the challenge ahead. The transitional process lasted more than 3 years, with a Constituent Assembly finally agreeing on a new constitution in January 2014. Many Tunisians understandably still remember the feeling of unity in the run-up to Ben Ali being overthrown.
I think I can speak for all Tunisians when I say that those days were the most beautiful days in every Tunisian's life. Because of course there was some fear, of course there was anxiety, but I think we all knew exactly what we wanted, and we all needed the same thing, and therefore we all went to the streets. And I think the sense of unity back then is something that we never experienced before, and I think we might never experience again.
Tunisia has endured a number of challenges since the fall of Ben Ali. The killing of 2 prominent politicians in 2013, attacks by armed groups in 2015 that badly damaged Tunisia's tourism industry, and the death in 2019 of President Beji Caid Essebsi just 2 months before the end of his term. Despite all the challenges, many Tunisians believe their young democracy survived, and that's led many observers to describe the country's revolution as the Arab Spring's only success story.
I don't think we should stop being optimistic. There's certainly so much to do, and probably on a political level, not very much have changed, and there's still big problems for employment and for the youth, and to stop the immigration. I almost feel like there's a need for a new revolution. I think what I hope for is that every young person growing up in Tunisia gets to believe in themselves, and by being in their country, they could be offered the same chances that they would be offered in another country, that they would risk their lives going to.
So now we know what happened during the Arab Spring in 2011, right? That flew over to Libya and parts of the Middle East, such as Syria. It's called a power vacuum. Ja, mensen, dat heet een machtsvacuum. Als dus de mensen in opstand komen en eigenlijk tegen hun leider gaan keren. Een machtsvacuum. En dat probeert Nederland het te voorkomen. Daarom heb je dus ook een demissionaire kabinet. Ja, dan is er nog altijd macht in Den Haag. En ja, een soort van reguliere besturing, die heb je dan. Hoewel, ja, deze mensen willen niet weggaan. Die willen niet van hun positie weggaan in Nederland. So, Netherlands is trying to prevent a power vacuum. This is why you have a demissionary cabinet, right? Even though these people do not want to go. They still sticking to politics and stuff like that, you know? So, let's take a look at the Libyan Arab Spring, right? Let's see if we can find that somewhere. 6 months of Arab Spring. Yeah, why not? Let's take a look at this here. So that is more countries within 30 seconds. Let's see if we can find stuff elsewhere.
Libya remains a mess. The country continues to grapple with civil war, humanitarian crises, foreign interventions, and the threat from ISIL. This week, a panel of UN experts said a political solution in Libya...
Panel. It's boring. Let's take a look at this.
When the Arab Spring protests swept through the Middle East 7 years ago, demonstrators across the region were hoping for democratic reforms and even the overthrow of local despots. But is war-torn Libya really a better place now without its brutal dictator, Colonel Gaddafi? And how did Bahrain become the forgotten revolution? An upfront special. Libya remains a mess. The country continues to grapple with civil war, humanitarian crises, foreign interventions, and the threat from ISIL. This week, a panel of UN experts...
This was 6 years ago, right? We're trying to find images from Libya, but never mind that. We have a documentary we always like to show on RHTVLive named Shouting in the Dark. Yeah, even Bahrain was demonstrating against their absolute king. And we're going to take a look at some images from that.
Their parliament has little legislative power and is dominated by royal appointees. The country has been run by the king's uncle for 40 years. Khalifa, the longest-serving prime minister on earth. Now, people believed there would finally be change. Together, they would create it. From Pearl Roundabout, demonstrations spread across Bahrain, addressing a range of complaints. Like the importation of Sunnis from Syria and Pakistan to staff Bahrain's army and police. Protesters say it's state policy to change the religious face of Bahrain and provide the ruling family with a loyal Sunni force to control the Shia majority, many of whom are unemployed.
قاعد نسكع في الشارع كله في الشارع تضيع وقت شنو نسوي يعني حصلت أشغال مثل المقاولات بني المجنس يجي في الجيش وفي الشرطة وإحنا نروح نشتغل في البني عمري 25 لمتى يعني بشتغل لمتى بكون نفسي
People were angry about the theft of public wealth, like Bahrain's iconic financial harbor area, sold to Prime Minister Khalifa for just 1 dinar. An independent investigation found the Khalifas have acquired $40 billion in public land for themselves and other VIPs, nearly 10% of the country. While many of Bahrain's indigenous Arabs are crowded in village ghettos, with 2 and 3 families forced to share the same substandard housing.
مواعين والحمام عشان برا البيت بالله من بلالة الهاي
العلم والمعرفة والعطاء تقديرا وعرفانا ومشاركة ودعما منا.
Pearl Roundabout had given ordinary Bahrainis the right to say what they really thought.
كنا نتنفس الحرية هنا المكان الوحيد اللي كانت تجي الناس تستنشق حرية هناك احنا ما تعودنا ان اي شعار اي فيلت انه داخل انبا اقوله اكتبه دايركت واحمله انا ان انا اريد اكيد هذا يعني شعور رهيب.
We were watching Bahrain and we feel for you, right? Because you never had the freedom. You wanted it. You went to the streets for your freedom. And then you were squashed by the government, right? Bullets flying towards you. People got killed. The Arab Spring has failed. We also see this in Syria, right? This is when the power vacuum came and they wanted to overthrow Assad with proxies that we as the Netherlands supported. Ja, mensen, we hebben het gehoord. Bahrein, we kijken nu nog steeds ernaar. In de hoop dat er ook verandering komt. Dat de mensen toch nog het moed hebben om de straat op te gaan. Om voor verandering te pleiten. Iedereen hoort vrij te zijn op deze mooie aarde. So everyone should be free on this beautiful earth. Right? Everyone. Including the Palestinians. Including anyone on the planet needs to be free. So And you were not shouting in the dark, Bahrain. We heard you. But our cabinet and our politicians said, we don't care about you. We hebben Bahrein gehoord, alleen de politici niet. Die hebben allemaal zoiets van, boeien. Qatar is belangrijker. Of Saoedi-Arabië, daar moeten we naar luisteren. Naar Bahrein? Nee, daar luisteren we niet naar. Wij hebben het wel gehoord. And, the revolution was put on halt. Right? Libya, big war, many factions fighting each other and stuff like that. Big war. General Haftar also tried to take over Tripoli, so one big chaos still in Libya. But we freed them. Yeah. We dropped some bombs in Libya and then we flew away and we gave the Libyans so-called freedom. Ja. We hebben een paar F-16's naar Libië gestuurd. Gewoon wat bommen gooien en dan wegwezen. Dag, tot nooit meer. Er gaat geen cent naar Griekenland. Er is ook geen cent naar Libië toegegaan nadat we Libië in puin hebben achtergelaten. Echt triest. Heel erg triest. So, our prime minister, when there was a Greek debt crisis, he said there's not one penny going to Greece, even though we, gave a lot of money to Greece. But, it's really insane. Nederland stuurt militairen en F-16's naar Libië. Nederland zet 200 militairen in voor NAVO-acties in Libië. So the Netherlands had put 200 military people in Libya for NATO actions. It's really insane. Really insane. So, hier hebben we een hele artikel over de Nederlandse bijdrage van het kapotmaken van Libië. Ja. Dus, hoe zat het ook alweer? Je mocht toch geen terroristische groeperingen steunen? Anders kwamen de sancties en zoiets. We're not allowed to support any terrorist organizations, even though we do support NATO, which is a terrorist organization. It's not defensive, it's offensive. We just showed you Libya, right? So it's a terrorist organization and no sanctions for the Dutch government. Nope. Geen sancties voor de Nederlandse regering hoor. Nee, hoe kom je daar nou weer bij? Ja. They're all criminals. So let's take a look at Al Jazeera. And we won't forget Bahrain. But there are other stuff to talk about, right? Let's take a look. How Modi keeps winning. That's also very interesting. Drug addiction in Afghanistan, I saw. Let's see what else we got here. Biden buys Netanyahu more time. Well, when the people rise up against Netanyahu, he doesn't have any more time. Let's see. Peru President Dina.
They forced their way in the middle of the night. At least 40 police officers and prosecutors searching for evidence Peru's president may have been enriching herself while in office. At the center of the probe is the jewelry and watches Dina Boluarte wears. And the judge wasted no time in ordering the raid of her home and government offices.
I reject this discriminatory behavior. It's not been the case with other presidents. This measure is arbitrary, disproportionate, and abusive. It affects the governability.
We know that in Peru you had another president who's now in house arrest, and you, madam, are vice president, and you proclaimed yourself a president. Right? This is what's happening, people.
2 weeks ago, media reports revealed Boluarte has appeared wearing different Rolex watches. The Attorney General summoned her to explain how she got them. She says she's worked since she was 18 years old to pay for what she owns. She's always prided herself of her humble origins and says the press is harassing her.
On the watch case, I ask myself, since when does a sector of the press concern itself with what a president wears or not? I hope and I want to believe it's not a question of sexism or discrimination.
Dina Boluarte came to power after former President Pedro Castillo was ousted in 2022. Her first months in office were tarnished with violent protests. She's facing an investigation for the deaths of 49 Peruvians killed by security forces.
This new political crisis is unfolding when polls suggest most Peruvians disapprove of Boluarte's government. Now her opponents in Congress are collecting signatures in a bid to impeach her.
For days, Boluarte remained silent and away from the cameras.
I will be attending as soon as possible before the prosecutor's office to clarify the watches case. I've always said I am an honest woman. I take office with clean hands, and thus I will retire from the presidency in 2026.
Boluarte's already weak government may now lose political allies, but she denies any wrongdoing and says she will not resign. Mariana Sanchez, Al Jazeera, Lima.
So this is happening in Peru, right? We weten dat dit een vicepresident was en de president die hebben ze opgesloten, huisarrest gegeven. En dit is eigenlijk de vicepresident die als president fungeert. We hebben het bijgehouden, hè? Peru. We hebben niet altijd een spotlicht gehad. Maar we weten echt wel wat daar gaande is. En ja, heel veel mensen vragen zich ook af van waar het nou precies ligt. Nou, dat laten we dus ook even zien. So we're going to show Peru on the map. For people who do not know where Peru is, it's in South America. And here we have Peru, right under Ecuador, next to Brazil and Bolivia and Chile. So this is all happening. And we do see parallels happening in Peru and also another country with a P, Pakistan. Right, we saw the prime minister being taken out. Not really, you know, he's been arrested. Imran Khan is arrested. There was an assassination on him, and this and that, but he's still hanging around somewhere, you know. But he has no political power anymore. And his party is a pretty big party in Pakistan. I believe they're second in the elections, so there's a coalition with that party. But Imran Khan is not affiliated anymore. So this is all happening, right? And we know that Pakistan and Afghanistan and Iran, Pakistan-Iran relations aren't very good. We saw all sorts of rockets fired from Pakistan into Iran and Afghanistan, right? So we're keeping an eye on Pakistan. Very interesting to see what's happening there. But we are watching all over the world, right? And yeah. lots of people are wondering why there are so many countries in the Balkans, right? Well, that's a very long story, but the Ottoman Empire used to be a lot bigger. It used to have the Balkans too, right? And then you had the first Balkan War where Romania, or was it Bulgaria? One of those two wanted to be free from the Ottomans. And we're going to take a look at the first Balkan War, right? Let's take a look at history and so we can have a better understanding of how Europe is made, basically. So the first Balkan War, this was prior to the First World War, right? The first Balkan War explained in 10 minutes. So let's take a look at this here.
It's the year of 1912. In the Balkans, also called the powder keg of Europe, tensions were at a high level. We are before the First World War, in the last years of the Ottoman Empire, and of their deep rule in continental Europe. In October 1912, a new war will start. The identity of the Balkan region was dominated by its geographical position. Since the ancient times, the area was known as a crossroads of culture and civilization. This area has been a bridge between the Latin and Greek parts of the Roman Empire. Also, it was the final destination of an important influx of migrators, Bulgars and Slavs. In the Middle Age, the region became an area where the two branches of Christianity met. Orthodox and Catholic people met since the Great Schism. After a few centuries, the region will contact a new religion and a new culture under the rule of the Ottomans. Their first ruler was Osman, which will be known as Osman I, the founder of the Ottoman Empire. It's not known for sure how small an Anatolian beylik started to dominate the region, but the vulnerability of the Byzantine Empire created the situation for them to expand. They passed into Europe, defeating local leaders and taking profit from the instability of the region. By the year 1400, the Ottomans were a true power, having control of much of the Balkans and western Anatolia. For the next centuries, the Ottoman Empire will expand even further and will rule the Balkans for more than 400 years. The majority of the people living in the area were Christians, speaking a different language, having another culture. The differences between the Turkish culture and the Balkan ones were huge. The Ottomans reached their peak in the 16th century, but in the next ones, their military system fell behind that of their European rivals. The Sultanate suffered military defeats in the 18th and 19th centuries. Also, rebellions started to happen, especially due to the rise of nationalism, a popular sentiment which changed the history of Europe. 19th century was a period of rebellions in the Balkans. Serbs, Greeks, Romanians, Bulgarians, and others revolted in a way or another against the Ottoman rule. Greeks declared their independence in 1821, and it was recognized in 1830. Also independence of Romania, Serbia, and Montenegro, and a semi-independence for Bulgaria was recognized in 1878 after a war, even if some of these countries declared their freedom sooner. By 1908, Bulgaria was recognized as fully independent. Tensions among the Balkan states over their rival aspirations to the provinces of Ottoman-controlled Rumelia, namely Eastern Rumelia, Thrace, and Macedonia, subsided, somewhat following intervention by the great powers in the mid-19th century, aimed at securing both more complete protection for the province's Christian majority and protection of the status quo. Even if these nations gained their long-desired achievements through their independence, Ottoman rule was still there over some of these people. Bulgarians, Serbians, Greeks, and others were left outside their motherland in this territory, still controlled by the Ottomans. Tensions existed between Serbia and Bulgaria over some territories. Serbia's aspirations to take over Bosnia and Herzegovina were thwarted by the Bosnian crisis and the Austrian annexation of the province in October 1908. After the unification of Eastern Rumelia, Bulgaria began to dream to its national unification. A large army was developed, but Bulgaria could not win a war alone against the Ottomans. On March 13, 1912, Serbia and Bulgaria signed a treaty which assigned northern Macedonia to Serbia and southern Macedonia to Bulgaria. In May 1912, Greece and Bulgaria signed a similar treaty, making use of the military actions against their common enemy. Montenegro's attachment to the League was secured by an informal arrangement with Bulgaria and Greece, and a treaty with Serbia concluded in September 1912. But Bulgaria refused to commit to any agreement on the distribution of territorial gains, unlike its deal with Serbia over Macedonia. Bulgaria believed that its army would be able to occupy the larger part of Macedonia and the important port city, Thessaloniki, before the Greeks. In 1911, Italy had launched an invasion of Tripolitania, in present-day Libya, the Italians' decisive military victories over the Ottoman Empire. This and the repressive policies of the Young Turks encouraged the Balkan League to imagine they might win a war against the Ottomans and achieve their desire to liberate their people. The first to declare war was Montenegro on the 8th of October 1912. An ultimatum was sent to Istanbul on the 13th of October. Bulgaria, Serbia, and Greece declared war on the empire on the 17th of October. The Ottoman order of battle when the war broke out constituted a total of 12,000 officers, 324,000 other ranks, 47,960 animals, 2,318 artillery pieces, and 388 machine guns. On the other side, Bulgaria mobilized around 600,000 men, Serbia around 255,000, Greece around 120,000, and Montenegro around 40,000 men. In the west, in the theater of Sanjak, the Serbs and Montenegrins coordinate their efforts. More to the center, the Bulgarians and Serbs focus together in the Macedonia. The main theater of the ensuing conflict was Thrace. The Bulgarian armies went south and besieged the major Ottoman fortress at Adrianople, called Edirne. This siege was important. Adrianople was an important city for the Ottomans. It existed since ancient times, and its importance existed in the Byzantine times as well. The siege of the city had historical meanings. Adrianople, a major Byzantine city in Thrace, was conquered by the Ottomans sometime in the 1360s, and became the Ottoman capital until the fall of Constantinople in 1453. The fall of the city after some months since the start of the siege can be seen as the downfall of the Ottoman rule in the Balkan region. Two major victories were at Kirk-Kilis and at Lul-Burgas. This one was the largest battle of this war, and a decisive victory of the Bulgarians. In just a short period of time, these successes opened up the gates to Constantinople, the Ottoman capital. The Turkish rallied at the Çatalca, the last lines of defense before their capital. An attack was made by the Bulgarian forces, already exhausted after important and hard battles. On the 17th of November, the attack failed, and from that time on, both sides settled into trench warfare. Elsewhere, the Serbian army broke the Western Ottoman army at Kumanovo on the 23rd of October. The Serbs then proceeded against diminishing resistance into Macedonia, Kosovo, and on through Albania, reaching the Adriatic coast in December. Even if the Greek army wasn't the biggest, however, Greece was the only Balkan country to possess a substantial navy. This was vital to the League, as it could prevent Ottoman reinforcements from being rapidly transferred by ship from Asia to Europe. The Greek army advanced in two directions. In the Battle of Giannitsa, Greek armies were led by the Crown Prince Constantine and won a very important victory, having as a result the capture of Thessaloniki on the 8th of November. The city was wanted by Bulgarians, who expected to capture it before the Greeks. Upon hearing about the Greek success, Bulgarian High Command urgently dispatched a division from the north in the direction of the city. The division arrived there a week later. Further west, in the Epirus front, the Greek army was initially heavily outnumbered, but due to the passive attitude of the Ottomans, pushed north after the victory at the Battle of Bazani in March 1913. Montenegrin forces moved into the Sanjak of Novi Pazar and besieged the northern Albanian town of Scutari. The Ottomans signed an armistice with Bulgaria, Montenegro, and Serbia on the 3rd of December. Greek military operations continued. By this time, Ottoman rule was limited to the three besieged towns of Adrianople, Janina, and Scutari, the Gallipoli Peninsula, and eastern Thrace behind the Çatalca lines. While fighting took place at Adrianople, Scutari, and Janina, the armistice was signed, and a peace conference met at London in December 1912. As a result of the Ottoman collapse, groups of Albanian nobles, supported by Austria and Italy, declared Albanian independence on the 28th of November 1912. A coup on the 23rd of January 1913 returned a young Turk government to power in Constantinople. This government was determined to continue the war, mainly in order to retain Adrianople. It denounced the armistice on the 30th of January. Hostilities recommended to the detriment of the Ottomans. Janina fell to the Greeks on the 6th of March, and Adrianople to the Bulgarians on the 26th of March. Meanwhile, in London, peace negotiations resulted in the Preliminary Treaty of London, signed on the 30th of May, 1913, between the Balkan Allies and the Ottoman Empire. By this treaty, the Ottoman Empire in Europe consisted of only a narrow band of territory in eastern Thrace, close to their capital. In the war, Ottoman army was quickly and decisively defeated, as the Balkan forces drove the Turks from almost all of their territory in the southeastern Europe over the course of a month. Of course, there were Ottoman victories too, but with less impact. The internal problem of the Ottomans, the instability of some territories, the wars and exhaustion of the Ottoman state, as well as the large and vulnerable borders in Europe contributed to their defeat in the end. At peace conferences over the course of the next several months, an agreement was reached. Macedonia was partitioned between the victors of the First Balkan War. The peace concluded on May 30th, 1913. But the story of the Balkan Wars does not end there. Bulgaria wasn't so happy. They imported territories but felt cheated out of their claims by Serbia and Greece. This will be the foundation stone for the next Balkan War.
So there you go. You also have the Second Balkan War and the Third Balkan War. Right? So, yep, that's all explained. Now you know why there are so many countries in the Balkans, right? You actually have a fourth. You could call Yugoslavia a fourth Balkan War, but Yugoslavia was a country. Anyway, this is why there are so many countries within the Balkans, right? They all want their independence and this and that, Europe has been at war ever since the Romans, basically, and we're still in war. Ja, we weten nu waarom er zoveel landen zijn in de Balkangebied. Behoorden eerst tot de Ottomanen, we zagen Bulgarije en meerdere die hun vrijheid wouden en zoiets. Dus we weten nou wel genoeg volgens mij, hè. Ja, er valt nog genoeg te bespreken. Zoals de Britannic. Dat kennen jullie wel, hè? Britannic. Het is Olympic, Titanic en Britannic. En Britannic die zonk bij Griekenland. Ja. En ik verzin het allemaal niet, hè. Ik verzin dit allemaal niet. Dus we gaan even kijken naar de Britannic. En ja, we hebben een beetje een beeld van de Eerste Wereldoorlog. Want ja, Britannic, dat was een ziekenhuisschip. Die ging gewonden vanuit Griekenland, ging die terug naar Engeland zo. Dat was een ziekenhuisschip. En we will never ever forget Britannic, a hospital ship within the Mediterranean. And she sank at the Greek islands. We gaan even hier naar kijken. The sinking of the Britannic.
It's a bright autumn day in late 1916, and off the coast of the tiny island of Kea, Greece, a giant is dying. Britannic, one of the largest ships in the world, has been mortally wounded, and she is quickly sinking. 1916 is at the height of the First World War, and Britannic, a hospital ship, painted white with bold green stripes and red crosses to try to mark it out as non-combatant, is about to be cut down before its time and will become just another casualty of the war. Nervously, passengers and crew gather at the lifeboats to be lowered away to safety. They know all too well that dallying on a sinking ocean liner can mean death. The orders have come from the bridge to fill the boats, but not lower them into the ocean. There is confusion, concern. The ship's crew hold off for a while, but then Britannic begins to list heavily underfoot, and there's no time to waste. The falls are released, and the boats lower away. They drop down bit by bit towards the perfect blue ocean until they hit the surface with a satisfying slap. The occupants begin to release the falls and set their boat free when there's a horrifying realization. The ship has sunk down enough that the massive propellers are now exposed, chopping the ocean into a seething white foam. Panicked, people jump overboard, but others are frozen in terror. Their wooden boat is pulled inexorably in. The rhythmic chopping of the blades is mesmerizing. Closer, closer. There can be no escape. His Majesty's hospital ship, Britannic. She is the largest floating hospital in the world, with room for hundreds of patients and staffed by hundreds more doctors, surgeons and nurses. Britannic is a godsend for men who have been broken in one of the fiercest and bloodiest meat grinders of the First World War. Britannic's interiors are barren and Spartan. There is no luxurious panelling or gilt fittings to be seen, but Britannic was not designed to be this way. Quite the opposite. The ship was supposed to be the most luxurious liner in the world, a veritable floating hotel. How it all came to be is a fascinating tale, and it begins at dinner on a summer night way back in 1907. J. Bruce Ismay is the mustachioed president of the prestigious White Star Line, one of Britain's premier transatlantic shipping companies, and tonight he's meeting with an old friend. There at the dinner table is the director of the Harland & Wolff shipyard, William Peary. The two companies have a decades-old partnership, and together they have built some of the finest ships in history. The men, joined by their wives, have sat down for dinner at Peary's London estate, and the events that transpire that evening would prove to be pivotal in maritime history. From this meeting came the very first plans to design and construct a new trio of ocean liners that would take the transatlantic trade by storm. They were to be larger and more luxurious than the ships built by their old rivals, the Cunard Line, the popular Lusitania and Mauretania, which at the time were the two grandest ships afloat. The three White Star wonder ships would tackle the Cunard liners head-on and put the White Star Line back on top. The first two liners would be built side by side at Harland & Wolff's yard in Belfast, and in 1911 the class leader, Olympic, was brought into service to great fanfare. She quickly became the most popular passenger vessel in the world, drawing in thousands of travellers who were eager to make their Atlantic crossing in world-class comfort. But quickly, it became clear to White Star officials that they had something special on their hands. Work on Titanic was coming along well, and she was on track to enter service alongside her sister ship in less than a year's time. But even as it seemed White Star was finally edging out the competition, there posed a new predicament. Cunard was hard at work on their brand new liner Aquitania, built to serve alongside Mauretania and Lusitania in service, and Germany's Hamburg America line was similarly rounding out a three-ship lineup of Imperator, Vaterland, and Bismarck. In Olympic and Titanic, White Star Line had opted to ignore setting speed records in favour of prioritising size and luxury, but now their rivals were playing by the same rules. Aquitania and the German ships were aimed specifically at topping Olympic and Titanic's luxury. It wasn't just size and luxury that were at play either. Cunard and Hamburg America both knew that to maximize profits and maintain as regular a service as possible, 3 similar or identical ships were needed. White Star Line knew it too. A mere 2 weeks after Olympic's maiden voyage, a third ship in the class was ordered, and in November 1911, her keel was laid where Olympic had once stood at the Harland and Wolff slipway. Harland and Wolff referred to their ships by hull numbers until the owners officially named them. In Olympic and Titanic's case, they were the numbers 400 and 401 respectively, but the third ship would be hull 433. Slowly, the hull began to take shape, as once again, for the third time, the workers at Harland and Wolff undertook to build one of the world's biggest ships. Millions of steel and iron rivets would be driven into thick steel plating, many of them by hand. Tons and tons of specialist castings completed on site and by the Darlington Forge Company. The ship's backbone and ribs, they began to take shape. In the machine sheds, massive bed plates and engine assemblies began to gather. Propeller shafts, thicker than the trunks of ancient trees, span on giant industrial lathes. But it wasn't just the cold iron and steel that would form this great ship. The secret to her popularity with passengers would be in the hands of the decorators and artisans responsible for filling the cavernous interiors with comfortable and inviting furnishings. Olympic and Titanic had both introduced a new standard of luxury, but already lessons had been learned about what passengers wanted from their ships. Some spaces on Olympic proved more popular than others, and this new ocean liner would take these lessons and improve on them. Not only that, but Titanic, which had done the same thing, would prove more in sight too, as passengers dined in her sumptuous saloons and restaurants and lounged in the smoking rooms and cafes. In April 1912, 433's hull was still being assembled. Human hands busily drove red-hot rivets home, carved panels and hammered ornate chairs together. But then, tools were down, and there came some shocking news. Titanic was lost. At the Harland and Wolff shipyard, the news hit like a lightning bolt. Shipbuilding was in Belfast's blood. The men and women of that noble, industrious city were justifiably and fiercely proud of their creations. It was ingrained in the city's culture. Towering over it were the enormous Arrol gantries, huge steel structures created purely to build ships. Poet Louis MacNeice began his poem Carrickfergus with the line, "I was born in Belfast, between the mountains and the gantries, to the hooting of lost sirens and the clang of trams." When news broke that Titanic had sunk on her maiden voyage, the centre of grief focused on the town of Southampton, England, where so many of the ship's crew had come from. But at Belfast, where the ship had been built and was expected to dock for regular servicing throughout her entire career, there was a dark pall of despair too. 10 members of the shipyard had joined Titanic for her first voyage, the so-called Guarantee Group, to ensure that all went well, but they were lost to a man. Chief among these was Thomas Andrews, Harland and Wolff's managing director and Titanic's chief designer. Churches were packed with mourners. Many remember seeing their fathers openly weeping for the first and only time. And there, sitting on the slipway unfinished, was the hull of the liner 433.
Yep, and she became a hospital ship and also sank, right? Ja mensen, we vergeten de Britannic niet, we vergeten Titanic niet, Olympic en al die andere schepen, zoals de Atlantic, die dus ook zonk voor de kust van Canada. Ja. Terrifying wreck of the SS Atlantic Halifax. Ook heel erg interessant om naar te luisteren. En zo heb je ook The Empress of Ireland. Ja, die kennen we ook wel, hè. Zo, daar, The Empress of Ireland. ook een schip die zonk in Canada. En ja, de Canadese Titanic, dat is een beetje hoe die bekend werd. En ja, we zullen het niet vergeten. We will not forget all these ship accidents and stuff like that. We will never ever forget. We know our history. And yeah, there's so much to tell about history, about what people forget, right? But we will not forget. So, ja, we hebben het over heel veel dingen gehad. En wat ook interessant is dit hier. Belisarius. Ja, dat was een generaal voor Justinian. Ja, die dus eigenlijk de Oosterse kant had, het Byzantijnse Rijk in handen had. Ja. En die generaal die heeft heel veel gedaan. Die is naar Italië toegegaan en ook hedendaagse Tunesië en zoiets. So we're going to take a look at Belisarius, the Emperor's Sword.
(532 AD). Constantinople, the greatest city in the world, is in flames. But this is no barbarian attack. Citizens of the Eastern Roman Empire are rioting, murdering state officials and setting buildings on fire. Trapped inside his own palace, Emperor Justinian fears his reign is over. He's already given in to the mob's demands and sacked his most hated officials. But now the crowds acclaim a new emperor, Hypatius. It's his wife, Empress Theodora, who'll give him the courage to act, and his most trusted general, Belisarius, to whom he'll turn to crush his enemies and save the regime. After centuries of imperial crisis, Justinian's reign will witness a Roman fightback that few had dreamed possible. Great victories over the barbarians, the reconquest of Rome itself, the reunification of the empire. Belisarius is the commander who will lead this onslaught. He will be remembered as Rome's last great general. Math and science are not subjects we talk about enough on Epic History.
Yeah, he's a very interesting guy, Belisarius. Right? We do not need commercials.
(527 AD). It's more than 50 years since the fall of the Western Roman Empire. Rome itself, the Eternal City, is now part of an Ostrogothic kingdom of Italy. But though Rome may have fallen, the empire endures. The Eastern Roman Empire remains a force to be reckoned with. An estimated 30 million people live under the rule of the emperor in Constantinople. His authority stretches from the ravaged Balkans to the imperial breadbasket, Egypt, the Arabian desert, to the mountains of Armenia. This Christian empire remains unrivaled in administrative sophistication, economic power, and military might. But the new emperor, Justinian, faces formidable challenges. In 527, he succeeds Justin, his uncle and adopted father, becoming the first son to succeed his father as emperor in more than a century. Justinian is from a tough peasant background in Thrace, what's now Serbia. He's highly educated, restless and driven, and sets himself two ambitious goals. First, to restore harmony in the Christian Church by ending the schism between Chalcedonian or Orthodox Christians and Miaphysites, who argue over Christ's human and divine nature. Second, to reform and rationalize Roman law, the divinely sanctioned institution that distinguishes the Roman world from the barbarian. The imperial majesty should not only be adorned with arms, but also be armed with laws, so that there may be good government in times both of war and peace, he later declares. But as for any Roman emperor, the ultimate test of his legitimacy will come in war. For now, Justinian has good relations with the Vandals in North Africa and the Ostrogoths in Italy. The Balkan frontier requires constant vigilance. The successors to Attila's Hun Empire are never quiet for long. But it's in the east that Justinian faces his most immediate challenge: the Persian Sassanid Empire, a rival superpower of the Middle East. This frontier has been a battleground for centuries and witnessed its share of Roman defeats, including one emperor captured, another killed. For most of the last century, the shared menace of the Huns led to a wary coexistence.
Now, Alexander, who came from Macedonia, had this all in his own hands, right? He even went also to Tunisia and stuff. You know, he had this in his hands, and then you know, Greece was annexed basically, right? A couple of times, and you know, the empire fell apart. First, it came into hands of generals of Alexander, right? We have Ptolemy in, we have Ptolemy in Egypt and other generals. So, you know, the Roman Empire became so vast because they annexed all what the Hellenistic Empire had annexed, right? They could not keep hold of the East. So, you know, very interesting to look at history. And we need to understand that most stuff has been about war, right? Warfare, expanding and your empire and also shrinking the empire and stuff like that, you know. Countries became a thought after Napoleon, right? So you need to realize what's really happening. No. Anyway, we're going to close off that with a song, of course. Let's see, Samson. Oh. There. No, not that Samson. Not the biblical guy. So, no, wait. There you have him. Sincerely a taxpayer.
I'm hurting. I can feel my my money draining. They take everything I make and you wonder why I'm complaining. I break my neck to make this money, then they just come and take it from me. My wages ain't that great in the first place, I should be paying you nothing. But they keep on coming and they keep on taking. These motherfuckers go ham on me every time I bring them the bacon. And I wonder what it's for. Ukraine, great, funding a war. Have we spent enough yet? Should I guess not? Look, here they come for some more. Fuck me, I'm sore. Sucks being poor. You had the same job for the last 6 years, wasn't struggling before. Back when Trump was in office, fuck all the junk that they called him. I never saw any of the shit that people always said he was in the comments. All of it was nonsense, I ain't even trying to ride him either. I'm just saying you gotta admit that shit was fine when he was the leader. It was fine when he was in charge. I never saw bills as high as they are. I never got chills just literally thinking about filling up my car. It shouldn't be that way. I don't care about Russia or Ukraine, but I do care about my own country. Is that insane? I care a lot about all the tons of money that we're paying, because it's mine, not yours, and I'm the one that feels the pain. I get taxed on my fucking ass for every dime I make. It'd be fine if they would spend my money wisely, but no way. It'd be great if they would take it and pay for important shit that benefited you and me, and not just wage wars with it. And where the fuck are all the liberals? I thought you stood against this shit. I thought the war machine was your enemy. Now you're friends with it? Now you wanna go to war? Now you wanna fight? Now you wanna pick sides in a feud where everyone is white? Now you wanna get involved and go and blow a person up? I'm just saying, I'm surprised this altercation ain't diverse enough. No one deserves this stuff. I just don't believe the tears you weep. Countries where brown people get bombed every day, I don't hear a peep, you fucking hypocrites. Thought the race thing was your shtick. I thought as long as white people were involved, you don't give a shit. Those are your words, not mine. I'm just wondering why. Why do we have endless money for them and none for Hawaii? Why is it every time Zelensky needs a loan from someone, we're the only ones that give it to him like we owe him something? We got issues of our own here at home that no one's discussing, and they keep growing cause no one in power is gonna do nothing. We're stuck. How the fuck we gonna help somebody else when we can't even reach inside our own pockets to help ourselves? We could allocate that money to our own people in different ways, to clothe and feed and bathe and let them know it'll be okay. We could definitely do that. Don't tell me it's not that simple. People overcomplicate this and make it some fucking riddle like can't just feed everyone, are you insane? You know how much that costs? Way less than we've sent to Ukraine, I know that for sure. You don't have to be a mathematician or a foreign relations expert to figure out that division. You don't have to draw a graph to see it would cost a fraction to solve half of the problems we have and stop them from happening. I'm just saying, what kind of fucking world we living in? So many billions we've given them, when's Europe chipping in? When we gonna start splitting and stirring up the dividends and begin telling other nations it's your turn to lend a hand? Listen, I don't think Ukraine deserves any of this, but I also don't think Zelensky is as great as they said he is. I don't believe the media when they blurt shit on their shows. You'd have to be naive to think this dude's as pure as driven snow. No one is, especially when you run a nation, dog. Your morals are compromised the minute that you take the job. So I don't trust Zelensky, Putin, Biden, or anyone. I don't think any of them give a fuck about all us little ones. All the people of Russia, all the people of Ukraine, most of the people of the USA probably feel the same. We don't want this shit, it's only the elites that do. They line their pockets, they profit from this, but not from me and you. Quite the contrary, in fact, we pay for it with our lives and money. They take chunks of everything we make, and soldiers die for nothing, so they can gain some more power and keep their banks fat, and all we get is table scraps. Fuck yeah, it makes me mad. Fuck yeah, I get upset. We're constantly ignored. Why the fuck I gotta pay for this? I don't want this war. How the Pentagon have $6 billion unaccounted for, but when I do my taxes, I'm afraid to be $1 short. I'm afraid I'll go to jail. I'm afraid I'll do some time if I don't pay you back the money that you wasted. That was mine. I can't keep quiet anymore. It's impossible to shut up. I'm sick and tired of being responsible for all your fuck-ups, but the question is, what we gonna do about it? There's never a plan of action. All we seem to do is shout it, and I'm guilty of it too. Always bitching and complaining, never walking, always talking, always lipping off and saying I'ma do shit, but I don't. And to be honest with you, that's the reason I don't make a lot of songs, and that's the truth. I'm sick of bumping my gums. I'm tired of flapping my jibs. Something needs to be done, and I don't know if rapping is it. We need a real solution, but we need to get together first, because unless we're all in this as a whole, it'll never work. However, what do I know? I'm just a moron with a pen, but there's power in numbers, and there's more of us than them.
The table is tilted, folks. The game is rigged, and nobody seems to notice. Nobody seems to care. Good, honest, hard-working people, white collar, blue collar, doesn't matter what color shirt you have on, continue to elect these rich cocksuckers who don't give a fuck about them. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't care about you at all, at all, at all.
They don't care, but we do. We know our history, right? Thank you all for watching. See you guys next time.